Hello and welcome to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to be doing a reading for the full moon in Scorpio that we have going on today. And I'm also going to be talking about the astrology of the full moon as well as doing a reading. So the reading will be looking at the energies, we'll be looking at how to embrace these energies and looking at what's like on the other side of this full moon. So before I get into the reading, I just want to talk a little bit about what Scorpio is about, what the full moon in Scorpio is about, and what this lunation is trying to help us with. So Scorpio is very much the sign that goes and dwells in the underworld, right? So it's the unseen realms, it's the shadow, it's the unconscious, it's the taboo part of our chart. And it rules the eighth house in astrology. So death, sex, occult, the magic, right? All of this sort of like magical world. And I want to talk about this a little bit first because I think that Scorpio gets a little bit of a bad name in astrology. Like people don't seem to love Scorpio for some reason. And I am actually a Scorpio moon, and I love this aspect of me, even though it's said to be in its fall. So let's talk about that actually. So the moon is in its fall when it's in Scorpio, and what that means is that there's exaltation, which is in its most comfortable, like best shiny place, and then it's fall, which is like the opposite, where it least likes to be. And I kind of think, while that might be true, it's always important to remember that just because something isn't comfortable somewhere doesn't mean it's bad, and it still has magic to teach us, right? So I kind of want to talk about a little bit about that. So what Scorpio invites us to do, and I think that this full moon is inviting us to do, is to look into our shadows. So I want to talk a little bit about shadow work, because I think in the spiritual community, we talk an awful lot about, yeah, you need to do shadow work. And then people are like, great, what does that mean? What do I actually have to do? What does that involve? And I think we kind of brush over it a little bit. So in really simple terms, like what shadow work is and what the shadow is just simply the part of us that is not conscious to, like in our conscious awareness. So let's say, for example, there is a part of you that seems to really enjoy scarcity. Now, if that's a shadowy part, that's a part that we are unaware of in ourselves. So it's anything that we do that we are unconscious that we are doing. And shadow work is about bringing the unconscious, what we are unaware of, into consciousness, right? So the question becomes, well, how do I make something that's unconscious, because I'm not conscious of it, right, into consciousness? And the simple answer to that, there's loads of ways, but the quickest way to establish your unconscious self is to look in your environment and see what you have manifested. So let's say, for example, you consciously want lots of money, you want great relationships, you want an amazing job, all of these things that are easy to sort of be consciously aware that we want. And yet, if you looked around, there wasn't like loads of money, you weren't in the perfect job, you didn't have thriving relationships, then that would indicate that there is a shadowy part of you, unconscious part of you, that is actually wants the situation that you are in. Now, I will just preface this by saying that what I'm about to say could be quite triggering, but I really want to hear I really want you to hear what I'm saying and to actually like not see this as a bad thing, okay? So if we say we want lots of money, but we're constantly struggling to make money, or we're always struggling at the end of the month to get money together, then there must be a part of us that is enjoying this situation. So using the example at the beginning where I said, I know for me, there's a part of me that really enjoys scarcity. And it was through being very, very willing to be honest with myself about my situation. It's like, I want loads of money and yet here I'm struggling. Okay, so let me look at that and go, what part of me might be really liking this situation? And this is hard to do because our egos don't like to admit that there might be some part of us that is thoroughly enjoying the current situation as it is. Because obviously there's another part of you that really doesn't, right? Let's be very clear. Your shadow part is not your whole self, it's a part. There's a part of you that finds it really stressful, a part of you that finds it really frustrating, and all of that is also true. And there might be another part of you that is deeply thrilled. And I'll speak for myself here. This is something I discovered through shadow work, that I was deeply thrilled about not having enough money, right? Like it was this sort of like, oh, I got to like chase after getting money, and it was always like this big drama, and there was a part of me that was like, this is fun. And when I was willing to go there and look at it, I was like, oh, there is a part of me that actually likes not having money and is deeply satisfied in this very moment. So that's kind of like one example of what shadow work is. So if you say you want one thing and you're manifesting something else, then there's probably a shadow at play here. So the invitation is to go, okay, so what is the part that's enjoying the situation right now? How, looking at my life, what might I be liking about this? And then when you actually discover it and you go there and you look at that and you go, oh, okay, so it's scarcity. Let's say we've established that it's scarcity. So then what do you do with that? Like awareness is the first part, allowing ourselves to go there and be like, oh, that's a bit uncomfortable, right? Because it's like, oh, it turns out I quite like, as well as liking abundance, I also like scarcity. What do I do with this? So then it's about being in full acceptance of that part of you and celebrating that part. Because the problem is that sometimes we get into awareness around it and then we go, oh no, I don't like that. Ooh, that's don't enjoy that. And Scorpio, so coming back to the thing about full moon and Scorpio here, is about saying like our work is to enjoy all of the parts, not just the bits that we deem acceptable, but the parts that we also find a bit uncomfortable to realize that we might like. So let's say it might be you discover that you really enjoy recognition, and that's like uncomfortable to realize that you like being recognized, or you like being valued, you like the idea of fame, like all of these kinds of shadowy things, right? Because it's the reason it's a shadow is because it's some kind of taboo, right? So it's a taboo to enjoy scarcity. It's taboo to enjoy being vain and liking how you look, like these kinds of things. And the great work is what's called in Hermetic magic is to look at all of the pieces of what it is to be human, like not just the parts that we find socially acceptable, but to look at all of them and be in adoration and complete. I think acceptance isn't enough, honestly. I think it needs to be like deep sort of like reverence to these parts, and that's what shadow work is. The challenge is that our culture is very good at shaming, like, oh, you can't like that, oh, that's not okay to like that. And it turns out that, well, we do, and if we don't look at those things, then it doesn't mean they're not running the show, right? As long as my desire for scarcity is like there, then it's going to continue playing out, right? So I need to become aware of it. I need to love that part of me. And then when I do that, the conscious part of me meets the unconscious, which is the shadowy desire for scarcity. And then they start working together rather than separately, because we try and manifest with the conscious mind, but it's the unconscious that drives the bus. So we need to get the unconscious part of us, i.e. the part that enjoys scarcity, on board with the part of us that likes abundance, and having these two marry, which is called the alchemical marriage. Again, this is all sort of in Hermetic philosophy. And then we actually are more likely to have more money, for example. So again, it's just using the example of money. This manifests in so many different ways, but that's really what this lunation is about being willing to go to the places that are a bit uncomfortable and looking at our sort of kinky desires for things that we might find uncomfortable at first to realize they are there. Now, if you are interested in more of this, there is a book that I would recommend that it was absolutely changed my life. Like, not only is it the best book on shadow work, in my opinion, it's one of my favorite books ever, and it's single-handedly like changed the way how I look at the world entirely. So that book is called Existential Kink by Carolyn Lovewell. And it's unbelievable, and it talks much more about shadow work and how you can actually do this so that we can have the lives that we truly want. And therein lies the magic of Scorpio. It's just not always that comfortable. That's the reason why people go like, oh no, I don't like it, don't want to see underneath. But if we don't look under the hood, then we can't actually have the lives that we want, in my opinion. Although I am a Scorpio moon, so I would say that. All right, so I just wanted to start with that and like just a little brief introduction into shadow work. And if you are interested in me talking about this even deeper, please feel free to leave a comment below and let me know. I could talk about this all day. I think it's so important, so misunderstood, and not really talked about enough, in my opinion, in terms of how we create beautiful, meaningful lives. So, with all of that said, let's get into the reading now. So I'm going to do a tarot reading for the full moon in Scorpio. I'm going to use Aleister Crowley's Thoth Deck, who was a hermeticist. And I'm going to start with the energies of the full moon in Scorpio. So let's see. Full moon Scorpio energies, please. Yeah, okay, makes sense. So I got one. Oh my gosh, like hundreds flew out there. What have we got? There might be a few too many there, so just pop them back. They might come back out again. Let's see. And yeah, I do realise that like what I've just said in that introduction isn't easy. It's not an easy pill to swallow, but if we can get past that, beautiful things can happen. Okay. Right, so I've got the first three cards, which is the full moon energies here. So here we've got Five of Wands, strife. So having a look at that, seeing what comes through to you intuitively. And here we've got Nine of Wands, strength. Yeah, I'm just looking, seeing what comes through for you. And finally, Ace of Wands. Okay, yeah, so I have to say, I'm not surprised to see this card, strife. I mean, this card often speaks of conflict, of fighting, and within this context, it feels to me like there's going to be some inner conflict, right? Because of everything we've talked about. So if we use this lunation to help support us, then there is going to be some inner conflict, and that's okay. Like, I think it's important here that we don't demonize conflict, that we're meant to have a cognitive dissonance sometimes, right? Of like, oh, that's uncomfortable to look at that, and that can create some discomfort, right? So definitely makes sense why this card is here, I think. And then we've also got Nine of Wands here, which I think is quite interesting. So this card speaks of strength. And I think that this full moon, because the question was like, what's the sort of energies and the like themes, it's going to be calling us to step into our strength this lunation. And also, like, this card can often speak of boundaries as well, so there might be a need for boundaries here. But yeah, I think that what it's really trying to say here is that this full moon has the potential to really allow us to step into our power. Because when we are willing to see our darkness, we become very, very powerful. And I think that's so, like, if anything lands, I hope that statement lands, because we are often so afraid to look at our own shadows and our own darkness. But when we do it, we become unbelievably powerful. And I think that's what this card is speaking of here. And then we've got here Ace of Wands. So yeah, it feels like, yeah, new beginnings. always with some kind of like lunation, it feels like there's a potential for a new beginning here, some new creative ideas, new passion projects coming through, as a sort of start to this next cycle. Okay, so I'm going to pull a few more cards, and here we're going to look at how to embrace these energies. How to embrace the full moon energy, please, for the collective. Okay, so here we've got the Emperor. Yes, right. Oh, this right. So first of all, okay, just realize this. All top three cards are all wands. Wands is fire, wands is courage, wands is going forth, and the Emperor is all about that, right? Being in his power, being powerful, being strong. So there's something here, because it's about how to embrace the energies. It feels like we are really being called to, yeah, to step into our power. Like, honestly, like, got all these wands. Got this, wands, wands, wands. Yeah, like there's so much about power here. I love this. Okay, there's a little bit more to come out for that. I can feel there's more guidance wants to come through there. But the next question I'll ask is what not to do for this full moon. Sorry, the cards are a bit jumpy right now. Pull this one out. Interesting. Okay, I've got another wands. Gosh. Seven of Wands. So Seven of Wands speaks of the wounded soldier. I do feel like, because this is a what not to do, there's something here about, like, if you look at the card, it's very like the wand. Sorry, I'm trying to say stick. the wand is quite beaten, and it feels like we need to like not feel like beaten up by this lunation. Like it, yeah, that's what it feels like. It's like it could be very easy to go into a bit of a victim-y mentality with this, because it's like hard and it's uncomfortable and it's like, oh, I don't want to, and it's a little bit, can be a little bit kind of poor me. And I feel like with this being in the what not to do, it's like not sort of getting it too into the wounds in a sort of like, yeah, victim-y kind of martyr is kind of what I'm getting with this. So it's like recognizing, like, yeah, so whenever I'm doing shadow work, like, I don't actually find, honestly, I don't find it uncomfortable anymore, because I know that it's powerful when I do it. And I know that the whole point is to, yes, it might be like, oh, that's a surprise, but if I'm aware of it, then I can do something about it, right? I'm actually in more control of the situation, because it's not just like unconsciously driving things forward. Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes sense. So yeah, something here about not falling prey to being like, oh no, like I've seen this part of me and now I'm such a terrible human being. It's like, no, you're just a human being, right? You're just a person, and we all have flaws, we all have darkness, and it's the ones that look at it that are the most powerful, because they can wield it and use it, rather than it being unaware and not using it, and it's just seeping out in sort of sneaky ways. Okay, and then what is on the other side of this full moon for the collective, please? I can't believe how many wands are here and how much fire is here. It's crazy. Ah, right. Okay, so Six of Swords. Smoother waters ahead. Love that. Okay, so right now it might be challenging for you if you're not familiar with this work as well. It's a bit uncomfortable to begin with, but the more you do it, the more it's just like, oh yeah, that's just part of being a human. um, but this card really speaks of like, yeah, moving away from sort of difficult times and more into easier, smoother, like waters. Very much like is what I get with this card. And also, like, speaking astrologically as well, the astrology of April has been super intense. It has. And like Scorpio is like, if I had to use one word to describe Scorpio, it'd be intensity. So it's like intense, 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 intense. All this firework and wands is intense. So there is a lot of intensity. So with all of that, I think it's really important that we do really take care of ourselves as well, because with intensity, we need to like rest more, and just like the more intense things are, the more you need to take care of yourself and your body and your health. That's going to be so important as well around this time. And yeah, like just know that things are getting easier. It's just that last little bit now, things are going to get smoother again. And I have to say, I'm really looking forward to that. So one other thing I wanted to mention actually, in terms of the full moon in Scorpio, so depending on what house it falls in your chart, might manifest slightly differently to you. So it's just worth saying, knowing where Scorpio is. So if it's in your first house, it's going to affect more like the self, you. It's going to be more about your identity and like looking at the shadows around more like you if you're Scorpio rising. If it was in your second house, it would be more looking at your money, your resources, your talents, and your self-worth. So it might be doing shadow work in those realms, looking at like, where do I have shadowy sort of issues around self-worth, around self-belief. That would be if you were Libra rising, okay? And then so on. So looking at the third house, that would be more like local community, siblings, writing, and more kind of like those areas. So again, looking at, if you want to sort of know a little bit more about that, look at like what each house represents, and that's going to be where the full moon in Scorpio is going to be transiting for you. And it gives you just a little bit extra detail in terms of like what area to look at in terms of the shadow work. So yeah, like if it's more sort of second house, then you might be looking at like money, so scarcity, right? Like I was just talking about, and so on. So this video is not going to cover, each house, but it's worth having a look at if you are interested to see how specific you want to get. So look up your birth chart and see which house Scorpio goes in, and then look up that house, what the meaning of that house is. Okay, so before I go, I'm going to do pull a few more cards from an oracle deck, and I'm going to use Yasmin Boland's Moonology manifestation cards. I'm going to pop a link for that in the description, as well as the tarot cards if you do like this deck and you want to get some yourself. I'm also going to put a link for the book that I was talking about, Caroline Lovewell's Existential Kink, and put a link in the description, because honestly, like, it's life-changing. It's so good if you're interested in this work. Okay. A little bit more guidance on how to navigate this full moon in Scorpio, please. Oh, hello. Okay, got one. Oh, yeah, love these. Oh, this is nice, actually. Okay, so we've got four, because four just fell out there, really. First of all, we've got detoxify, which is kind of what I was saying before. So there's something here about like needing to take care of your body. It's been coming up so much in readings recently as well, of like cleansing, clearing. I did a big clear out this morning, actually, incidentally, like, which now makes sense. Clearing my space, drinking lots of water, that kind of thing. So making sure that around this time we're clearing, because full moons are intense anyway, and when it's in Scorpio, it's like extra. It's like intensity. So clearing, and full moons are about releasing and clearing anyway. And then we've got, which I love so much, making time for self-love. So yeah, just again speaks the same kind of thing, really taking care of ourselves, because there is so much intensity. So just looking after ourselves and making time for that. So like carving out time, I'm going to do this nice thing for myself. I'm going to like have a bath, like something like that. Maybe water as well might be useful, because there's so much wands energy, so much fire energy. So some water to just sort of cool things off a bit. And then we've also got here relax, which is lovely. So relaxing, just as extra sort of things. So with all of this sort of fire and intensity, we just really, really, like, the message is very much take care of your body, take care of your body. And then I was laughing because at the bottom of the deck, reveal what needs to be seen. Last quarter moon in Scorpio. So yeah, everything we've said there, shadow work. So I'm hoping that that bit at the beginning of this video gave you a little bit of an idea of actually how you can go about doing that. So just looking at an area of your life that doesn't feel like congruent with the life that you say you want. Because obviously, if it's already matching and you're in alignment with it, great. But if you're not, and it's like, that's weird that I want this, but this is happening, that's where shadows are dwelling, if you like. And so I really hope that was helpful and just gave you a little bit of insight of actually how to do that. But yeah, don't forget, in amongst all of that and doing this work and revealing the truths, because Scorpio is all about revealing truth as well, revealing underneath, taking the best possible care of yourself as possible is so, so, so important. And just being really gentle with yourself through this process, not going into the beating yourself up. Yeah, beating yourself up, what not to do. When we reveal these parts, it can feel tempting to do that of like, God, I'm just such a terrible person. No, you are not. You are a person. Yes. And in some ways you could say like we are terrible, but that's okay. Like the point here is like we're both divine and we're both terrible and capable of evil. But that's not something to feel shame about. That's something that is true in all human beings. Like it's not a you thing, it's a human thing. And you are here as a human being, humaning. You're a soul in a human body, and you're here to experience the human experience. And that is part of the territory. And if we allow that to happen and allow ourselves to embrace those parts and love those parts and find those parts adorable and hilarious, then we'll be much more integrated as human beings and we will lead, hopefully, better lives. So, anyway, I will leave it there because I've been talking quite a while now. I hope that was helpful. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. And if you've been doing shadow work before and your experiences of that, please pop it in the comments below. I always love hearing from you guys. And yeah, thank you for being here. And if you did like this and you think it might be helpful for somebody else, feel free to share it. Subscribing means you get more content like this in future as well. So feel free to do that too. Once again, thank you for being here, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.